Well, a few days ago, ACTE asked me if I'd like to present at the Region 4 conference virtually. So I thought to myself, well, I think that's a great idea, but it's important that, the audience kind of gets to know the presenter a little bit. So I wanted to kind of take them through the preparation for, presenting at a virtual conference. I mean, obviously you got to look your best. Somebody's got to do something about that hair. Yeah, that's it. I better get that brush going and, comb out those gray and blonde mixed up locks there. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Let's get your Mr. Rogers jacket on here, and let's get this show on the road. This is a little bit different. I'm going to be presenting from this thing instead of standing in front of you and doing my normal routine. So let me introduce myself. Well, that's not me up there. I'm the one down below with his finger pointed up in the air. This is my son, and he used to live out in Nevada, and he was a tiny house guy. He wanted to build a tiny house, and so since my background is in construction, I wanted to help him out a little bit. So this is us working on his tiny house. This is one of my favorite pictures. You'll notice the guy to my side there. He's pretty famous in racing car circles, and I had an opportunity to meet him. And turns out that one of our clients is the Automotive Lift Institute, ALI. They're the folks who do the certification work for automotive lifts and anything pneumatic. Anyway, their national spokesperson is none other than Richard Petty. So it's great to meet with him and have this picture taken. In line with getting to know the speaker, something else I kind of like to play around with is underwater photography. And this is a giant manta that I happened to catch somewhere off the coast of Mexico. Not catch, but catch a picture of. And the individual also in that slide is my wife. And she's a biologist, and this was kind of a nice picture, and I thought I'd share it with you guys. Anyway, let's get to the heart of things and stop messing around showing my family album. So this is the real me. I'm President and CEO of NOCTI and NOCTI Business Solutions, and have been for about 15 or 16 years. My real background, though, is in CTE. I've been involved in CTE for well over 40 years, fast approaching 45 years, actually, and have served as a state director and a teacher and a building administrator and also a teacher educator, along with some experience in the construction trade before I actually started. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is a little bit of a situation that we have that involves the preparation of something near and dear to my heart, and that's the CTE Administrators. How do we prepare and how do we license CTE Administrators across this great country? We're going to cover three pieces of information in this presentation. The first of which is why we have a problem and what's going on across the country regarding the preparation of CTE administrators. The second is what sort of resources do we have that are available to us that that we can use to help us improve and work on becoming better CTE administrators. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is a couple of specialized pieces of information that you can use to help you become, more familiar with the whole administrative role in approved CTE programs and schools and community colleges. Again, pretty much any place that you happen to work. So while I've been chatting about what we're going to do in this presentation, maybe you've been reading this particular slide, and it talks about some research that an acquaintance of mine has done. His name is Chris Zirkle, and he works at Ohio State University. And he did some work really recently about the licensing requirements for CTE administrators across the country. That means the research that he came across is that 34 states don't have a CTE administrative certification. They rely on general administrative certifications, and unfortunately, that doesn't work. Did your administrative training involve job and task analysis? Did it involve workplace legislation? Have you had employment experience in an industry other than education? What about products, processes, equipment, and materials needed to deliver a product or a service? How about developing real relations with an employment community? The kind where you don't ask for donations or money, but the kind where you do listen and provide suggestions as to how you can help. Where do you learn that if you don't pick it up in a degree program or through a certification or a license? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we do have some resources that you can utilize. In fact, one of those resources is found with ACTE's webpage. It's the Quality CTE Program of Study Framework. Now, this program of study framework is really about identifying quality programs, but if you're a CTE administrator, you can use this as a kind of a benchmark, for how your programs are doing. Look at those things like, do you have a standards aligned integrated curriculum? Do you have a data and program improvement plan? Do you have CTSOs? Do you have engaging instructors? Those kind of questions are important to ask as a CTE administrator if you really want to run a quality program. We have another resource too. A couple years back, my organization, NOCTI, and ACTE formed a collaboration. And they formed this collaboration because they realized that there was a problem. There was a problem in preparation of CTE teachers, mostly in finding and retaining CTE teachers. But there was also a parallel problem, and that was in finding CTE administrators who were qualified and had an understanding of the program. So we put together a series of books together, and we're just finishing up the third one in the administrative series. We're hoping that book is available by the time Vision 2020 rolls around. Anyway, the book that we're concentrating on today is called CTE Administrative Leadership, 10 More Things to Know in Your First Year. It's the second in the series, and in that book there's a chapter entitled Quality Programming Components. And one of the things that chapter outlines is state program approval standards. And this could be a resource for new CTE administrators as well. Because I shouldn't say most, but many states have a program that recognizes whether or not a program qualifies for CTE federal funds. And there's a whole organizational process with that. And you can see some of the components listed on the screen. The bottom line, though, is that if you're a good quality CTE administrator, you recognize that quality teachers make quality programs. You know, as a school administrator of any ilk, that 80 to 85% of your costs are in personnel, and the vast majority of the personnel is in teaching staff. You know that if you don't have students, you don't have programs, and you don't have funding. That leads to a vicious cycle of decline of a technical workforce in your community. So as a CTE administrator, you want to get it right. So from the CTE Administrative Leadership book, 10 More Things to Know in Your First Year from NOCTI and from ACTE, we're going to focus on some of those resources that you can use to become a better CTE administrator. Remember, these are from Chapter 4. These are from the quality programming components. Now, we're not going to have a chance to go through all 14 of these. And again, these are just some of the resources in that chapter. The quality framework from ACT is also in that chapter. But let's take a look at just a few of them that we're going to have the opportunity to focus on. We'll take a minute and we'll focus on proper planning. And we'll do a little bit of focusing on proper equipment. We'll touch on quality staff. We'll discuss work-based learning opportunities. And finally, we'll talk about industry engagement, because we think this is one of the most important components of a quality program and a quality preparation of a CTE administrator. I'll explain why in just a minute. So let's get started discussing one of the first components or the first skills that a CTE administrator really needs to have a handle on, and that's proper planning. You know, as a CTE administrator, you need to understand how your programs fit the community. What level of technical preparation is expected in your community? Are you offering exploratory programs? Or are you offering programs where your students enter into employment? Are you a prep program for a post-secondary technical program? Are there features in your community that are kind of unique? You know, maybe a large employer or a pre-existing union apprenticeship that's really strong in the community. How much homeschooling is going on in your community? How much private schools? Are there adult programs? Remember, CTE is an elective. So how do we get the word out? Understand how your school works. Are you in a regional school, a magnet school, a community college? Can you use your employers to generate interest? Do you use things like signing days? You know, when a student decides to come to your CTE program, do you make it a big deal? If you don't, you should. Proper equipment is another area of focus for the CTE administrator. First of all, there are just too many times that CTE programs skimp on this one. And frankly, if you're an administrator with no experience in purchasing items costing in the $10,000 to $100,000 range, where do you turn for help? This wasn't part of your training program as a secondary school principal. You guessed it, advisory committees are the way to go. Who knows better than the plant manager as to what kind of equipment is in their facility? The facility where your students ultimately may work or may become managers. You know, desktop units may be expensive and they may be great at teaching concepts, but they aren't what students are going to see when they leave the school. They aren't what students are going to see when they talk to that plant manager and take a tour of the plant. Make sure, too, that there are adequate workstations for every student. There are lots of times when students don't get the opportunity to try a different piece of equipment just because there aren't enough of those pieces of equipment. And one other thing, while we're talking about proper equipment and equipping a facility, think about utilizing that equipment to provide training for incumbent workers or for new employees. That plant manager is going to want you to train them on equipment that looks like that's in their facility. That makes training relevant. Our third point of focus is student opportunity. What kind of opportunities do you provide at your institution? What makes students want to come to your school? Our old friend Maslow said there was a hierarchy of needs, and one of the big ones was a sense of belonging. Do you have a spot where students can come together? Is there a part where they can find meaning in the relationships they build because of common interests with their classmates? Maybe CTSOs is the answer. Of course, the other hierarchy of needs refers to, your ability to kind of fulfill your dreams. And in order to do that, you need capital. You need resources. You need money. Show me the money. And you need experiences. You can get those things from work-based learning. Like we said before, teachers are your program. If you don't have a qualified teacher, you really won't have a program. Students of any age vote with their feet. They just won't show up. You'll see things like absences. You'll see discipline actions. You'll see mounting evidence that, the wrong teacher will just decimate a program. But once you find a good teacher, once you find qualified staff, you got to know how to provide for them. Do you know the basics of biotech? How about cosmetology? What do you know about wind turbines or robots? You need to find those instructors by utilizing some kind of third-party mechanism to assess their credentials and their skills. NOCTI provides a credential that you can use to all teachers who potentially become your teachers. You can get a sense of their knowledge of the industry, their knowledge of their particular trade. We find time and time again, when a teacher's knowledge is weak, they transfer that weakness to their students. You don't really want that. And if you do have that teacher who has a weakness, you've got to know how to correct it. In addition to doing some sort of pre-employment kind of assessment of your incoming teacher, you also need to involve employers' expertise in the hiring process. Once that teacher is hired, you've got to involve employers and maybe get them to help you continue the growth of that teacher. Maybe they can provide some externships. Remember, you're not hiring a degree. You're hiring a lifetime of experience. Ensure that the skills that they brought to the table in the first place stay sharp so students can reap the benefits of that experience and expertise. Okay, you made it. This is the last point. CTE administrators really need to focus on their skills regarding industry engagement. This is the big one. You need a relationship that's more than just one or two meetings a year. Meetings where you talk about the great things your school does, how your students are doing, how your teachers are innovative. It doesn't involve telling. It involves listening. It involves a relationship where, you make arrangements to go visit a plant or a workplace, and you sit down over lunch and you listen to an employer's needs. Your school needs to prove, your programs need to prove that you're worth it. You need to show employers in your community that you deliver quality and that you appreciate their employer involvement. Send a little thank you through your CTSO. Remember, most employers pay their fair share of school taxes already, and they don't necessarily see a direct effect. What can you do to change that perspective? What can you do to make sure that your employment community appreciates you, your programs, and the things that your school does? Once you've verified your worth, then maybe it's time to make some requests. Maybe you can ask for that externship for your professional development for your teachers. Maybe you can ask for a cooperative education slot so your students can get some experience. Maybe you can ask the employer to come in and just talk about the work that they do in their particular workplace. Maybe they're willing to offer a scholarship or identify, help with your credentialing process. I know in my line of work, NOCTI, we use occupational advisory committees to evaluate student performance tests all the time. And it's a good opportunity for the employer to see where the best students are, who has the best competencies, who has the best skills. It gives them an opportunity to see who they'd like to hire. Industry engagement is a great catch-all phrase for all the great relationships that you can form with your local employment community. Make it work. Well, I hope you enjoyed that presentation, and I hope you were able to get a few things of importance out of it. We spent a lot of time comparing what states do around the country to prepare their CTE administrators, and we tried to direct you to resources that you might be able to use. So now, I think I better get ready for some questions. Okay, so what do you got? So I really appreciate your questions, and we'd be happy to, continue part of the conversation. I'm going to leave you with my contact information. There's my NOCTI information. Of course, if you want to purchase the book resource that I've been talking about, you can get that through ACT's bookstore. And if you'd like to contact me, you can do it at nocti@nocti.org or john.foster@nocti.org. Or if you like, you can use the QR code on the screen. That'll connect you to my LinkedIn profile. Thanks a lot, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Take care now, and stay safe.